When you're on this journey of figuring out who you are, figuring out how you need to make a change, whatever change it is that you're seeking to make in your life, belief plays such a huge role in the process. There are all these negative thoughts that we talked about that are on autopilot. A lot of them are negative. Um, but you have to sign off on those negative beliefs, right? You have to accept them. And a lot of times when they come to us on autopilot, we don't even think about them. We just sign off on them because that's always how it's been. I've always believed that I needed to lose weight. Even at the lowest weight that I was at, even when I was 140 pounds, I still believed that I needed to lose weight. I've always believed that I don't have enough money. Even though now I make more money than I have ever made in my life, I make more money than my parents do, and I still believe I don't have enough money. But the thing is that you get a say in these beliefs, right? You have the choice of signing off on them or rejecting them.
Hi there, this is Sarah Kuhn. If you are an INFJ or in a relationship with an INFJ or related to an INFJ in any way, and you want to figure out how they operate, what makes them tick, and how to communicate with them better, this is the show for you. It's called The Quiet Ones. This is a show that deconstructs INFJs, what they are, how they think, how they feel, how they operate, and how they relate to people with other personality types. Whether you have just found out that you're an INFJ or have known for a number of years, there is something for everyone. You will learn more about your personality type so that you understand who you are and understand how you operate in the workplace, in relationships, in your family, and with friends. I want you to walk away from every episode feeling like you have a place of belonging, feeling like you are no longer alone, feeling like you have a place to be heard and seen and understood as you really are. This is a place to connect with other INFJs, to learn and grow and really thrive. I want to give you inspiration and real life strategies that are going to help you figure out how to live your best life every single day. Though INFJs are very rare, you are not alone in this world. You are not the only one who thinks the way that you do and feels the way that you do. Hear from real INFJs just like you.
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of The Quiet Ones. I wrote this blog post this week that was called, I'm Not Okay. This is not okay. And I got such an amazing response from it. It's so easy for us to think that we're alone, that we're the only ones who's feeling all of the feelings. And that's what so many of the comments were. The blog post was about just being overwhelmed with so many different things, spending too much time watching the news, too much time on social media, and just feeling like everything is not okay, and feeling the weight of all of that and not knowing what to do about it. So many people responded by saying, yes, yes, I feel the same way. I don't know what to do about it either. I just know that, yeah, I feel that way. And I guess the end of the blog post for me, it felt really weird because I like to end blog posts with like, okay, here's what you do. Like you start the blog post with, hey, here's a problem. And then maybe you talk about the problem, try to understand it a little bit better. And then the end of the blog post should be like, hey, here's 3 or 5 or 20 things that you can do to make it better. And I didn't have any solutions. I still don't know that I really have any solutions, except to say, I'm not okay. And if you're not okay too, that's okay. I want to be able to hold space for you. I want to just show up and say, listen, I'm not okay. And if you're not okay too, that's okay. You're not alone. And I really feel like there's so much power in that. It's so nice to know that there are other people out there that are struggling too. And even if nobody has a solution, It just feels better to say, hey, you're not alone. We're right there with you. And I keep repeating the thing that Glennon Doyle says so much, which is life is hard. And it's not because you're doing it wrong, it's just hard. But we can do hard things. Before we get to today's episode, I wanted to tell you about something that I've put together for you, just for you. A lot of people come to me and they say, okay, so I found out that I'm an INFJ. What now? What do I do now? What's the next step? I realized that a lot of people start looking for their personality type because they're going through something really big in their life. They're going through something that's difficult. Maybe you're like me, where you found out that you have depression and anxiety, and you're in the worst time in your life where you're just like so unhappy when you should be extremely happy. Like, everybody's around you is telling you like you have so much to be thankful for, and you're like, great, but I don't know why I'm so unhappy. If you find yourself in that position, if you're looking for something, you're not alone. That's why all of us are looking for our personality type. That's why we're so interested in understanding ourselves and learning more about ourselves, because you've either just started or you're on this journey of self-improvement, of growth, and it's a courageous, amazing, wonderful journey. But if you're also just getting started, it can be really difficult at times. You start uncovering things about yourself and you're like, I don't know what to do with this, or I don't know what the next step is. Like, yes, I know that I want to make a change in my life, but how do I do that? I know that I need more courage. I know that I need more self-love. I know that I need more confidence. I know that I need more happiness in my life. So how do I do that? I've put together this workshop that's called I'm an INFJ, What Now? And it's to help you find the answers to all of those things. We're going to talk about why understanding your personality type is so important and what's the next step in the journey. We're going to talk about how to find self-love, how to have more confidence, and all of these things are what leads you to happiness in your life. The workshop is Thursday, September 2nd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It is completely free. So please make sure that you go and sign up. You can sign up at infjwoman.com/workshop. And there is a link for it in the show notes. On today's episode, we are talking about breaking the habit of being you. I bought a book recently, which I randomly discovered on Instagram, that is called Breaking the Habit of Being You. And I bought it without knowing who the author was, knowing nothing about them. I just loved the title. And once I bought the book and started reading it, I was like, ooh, this is not what I thought that it was. It's still a great book, a wonderful book. But it's not what I wanted. It's not what I expected from that title. And this whole idea of the habit of being you, it keeps coming up. It's come up in several other books that I have too. So I wanted to explore that a little bit more. So much of who we are is a habit. I read this statistic in this book that I'm reading called How to Do the Work. It says that 90% of our thoughts that we think and the actions that we do are autopilot. So if you think about like when you get up in the morning and whatever your morning routine is, maybe you take a shower in the morning, you fix your hair, you do your makeup, you brush your teeth, all of that is out of habit. You probably do it the same way every single morning. Maybe if you have kids, it might be a little bit different, but I don't have kids, so it's basically the same thing for me. If when you're driving to work, if you're still going into the office, how many times have you ended up at work and you don't really remember the drive? It's because you know the drive so well, you know the way to get to work, that you don't need to be present or in the moment. Your brain just automatically does the work for you, right? But it isn't just those kinds of things. It's not just brushing your teeth or taking a shower, driving to work that we do on autopilot. So many of the thoughts that we think are on autopilot too. A lot of it we don't even recognize. Things like probably things that you heard when you were growing up. There were a few common phrases in our house. Things like, I don't have the money, or I need to lose weight, or you just need to be quiet, like just stop talking. So many things like that, that I remember hearing the phrases when I was young, and now they've become such a part of me that every single day, regardless of what I'm doing, I think I need to lose weight. Every time I want to buy something, I think I don't have the money. When it's like, do you really not have the money? How many times have you wanted something that you really didn't have the money for? And you're like, you know what? I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to figure out how to make it work, and it's going to work. And so it did work. I'll be really honest with you here, because I know that we're friends and you're not going to like judge me for these things, and you're not going to go tell a bunch of people. There have been times where I have bought concert tickets that have been more than $1,000, and I really haven't had the money, but I still bought the tickets, and I was still able to pay all of my bills, and the world didn't end. At least I don't think it has yet. Sometimes it feels like it's getting close, but it didn't. I was still able to function. I bought the tickets, and it was like, oh, my first reaction was I don't have the money, but then it was like, oh, wait a minute, actually I do have the money. I did make it work. Recently there was a course that I wanted to buy that's kind of like sort of about business, but sort of also about personal growth. And I just love the person who is putting on the course. Her name is Kathy Heller. She has this podcast called Don't Keep Your Day Job. If you haven't listened to it yet, you definitely should. And she does this course that's called Made to Do This. And the course is like $3,500. It was when I bought it. And every time she launches it, she does like this free, like 5-day session of like free workshops. And I always make it a point to go to those because she's so inspiring, and I just love so much of what she says. And I was sitting there in the last one like, I wish I could do this more often. Like I wish I could like have her as a coach. I'm sure that I could make so much more progress in my business, and that everything could be so much better. But almost $4,000 is like a lot right now, and I just don't have the money. And then she started talking about how we tell ourselves that we don't have the money, and she's like, how can you afford not to? Like, you think, how can you afford to do this? But the real question should be, how can you afford not to? And then I started thinking about it that way, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe she's right. Maybe this thought that I have of I just can't afford it, like, maybe that's not the truth. Maybe that's just like an autopilot type of thought that keeps saying the same thing over and over again, when obviously there's evidence that that's not true. And so, of course, I bought the course, and I'm glad that I did, because I've learned so much in it, and it hasn't paid for itself yet, but I keep hoping that it will. But it's a great course, and I've learned so much from it. There's so many habits though, that so many things that we think, and a lot of it is like things that we think about ourselves. Like, I can't start a podcast. I can't do YouTube videos because I'm an introvert, and like I hate being on camera, so therefore I just can't. And we stop with that, like I can't. There were so many times that I stopped writing a blog, even though I wanted to write a blog, because I was like, well, I'm not a writer, so therefore I can't write. I'm not very good at spelling, so therefore I can't be a writer. I'm not a writer, so therefore I can't write a blog. There was like this chicken and the egg sort of conversation that I had, like, you have to be a writer to write a blog. And I'm like, well, okay, what makes you a writer? I don't know. Don't you have to write a book? Well, if you haven't written a book, then how do you become a writer? Like, aren't you a writer when you start writing? Like, if you want to write, then you just have to write. And it doesn't matter if it's a blog or a book or whatever it is. Like, you don't have to have a published book in order to be called a writer. But there's just so many of these things that we think on autopilot, right? And a lot of them come from things that we've learned or things that we've been told from our parents or from teachers or other, parental figures. I'm sure that if you're like me, your parents probably said things to you like, you're just too sensitive. You need to stop wearing your heart on your sleeve. Like, you're going to keep getting hurt if you keep doing that. I also heard things like, don't be angry, don't be mean, don't get loud, don't be too honest. You're always too honest with people, and that's why they don't like you. So don't be too honest, but don't lie to them either. Don't get too far outside of the line. Don't do anything weird or unusual. Don't share too much about yourself. Don't tell people about your faults. And then there was also this whole list of like do's. So be polite, make sure that you're always nice to people, make sure that you get good grades in school. You have to love your family regardless of how they treat you. They're your family, so you have to love them. Make sure that you're friendly to everybody. Doesn't matter how they treat you, you still have to be nice to them. Be the bigger person. You have to get a good job. You have to do well at the work that you do. Make responsible choices, do the right thing, make friends, and go do things with them. That's what normal people do. Make sure that you socialize and network, put on a good show regardless of how you feel. All of these things. And all of these things add up to who you become. And again, if you're anything like me, you listen to all of these things. I was like this sponge when I was young. If my parents told me to do something, I would do it. If they told me not to do something, that there was no way that I would ever get anywhere close to doing those things. So when they told me to be nice, then I'm like, okay, I have to be nice to everybody regardless of how they treat me. Like, I can't not be nice to them. I can't walk away from them if they're mean to me. And what ended up happening is I went so far for all of the people in my life that it was like I didn't even know who I was anymore. I had all these different masks that I put on for those people, and it just became a habit that like that was who I was. And it didn't matter if I was 12 or 15 different people, as long as the people around me liked me, I could adapt my personality to those people and make sure that they were okay with me. But all I knew was the masks. All I knew was who I was pretending to be for those people. I didn't know who I really was. I didn't know how I was really supposed to be. I had no idea. And it's almost like we learn to shut down who we really are just to make other people comfortable. We have, as INFJs, we have a couple of amazing things about us. We have two functions, the top two functions. Well, we have four functions total, but the top two ones are the most important ones. The first one is called introverted intuition. So that helps us be able to know things about people when we meet them. It helps us to be able to read between the lines, to know what people aren't saying. And then we also have extroverted feeling, which helps us to be able to feel what other people are feeling. And both of those things combined make us these wonderful, amazing people who have this unbelievable empathy for other people. We can literally feel how they're feeling, even if we've never felt what they're feeling before. We can pick up on the energy in the room so much easier and so much more naturally than most people. And it can be an amazing, wonderful thing, but it can also be something that is almost like a form of torture for us. Because if we're so focused on everyone else that we shut down how we feel just to make other people feel comfortable, well, that's not okay. And so many times in life, people tell us that, or we have this idea that it's like some form of being noble to be miserable. And it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense when you think about it, because there's only so much time that you can spend being so focused on everybody else and being so completely miserable. At some point, you're going to reach a breaking point, right? I reached a breaking point. When I was talking about earlier, I was in my dream job and I was so unhappy. But I would call my parents and call my friends and I would try to tell them, like, I know this is my dream job, but I'm so miserable. And they were like, well, I mean, that's part of the dream. Like, you're living the dream. What do you have to complain about? Why are you complaining? Why are you always being so negative? Like, you're living this amazing dream and people, anybody else would be happy and would be excited. And what's wrong with you that you're like so focused on everything that's negative? And for me, that was just like piling on more guilt and more shame and more of like, okay, I shouldn't be feeling like this. Like, it's wrong for me to be feeling like this, which I had felt that feeling so much because I'd been told that so much for my whole life that that was normal for me. It was normal for me to shut down everything that I was feeling and to feel guilty for feeling and to go along with what everybody else said. But there came this point where I'm like, I can't take it anymore. And, I went to a counselor and she's like, this is not okay. This is not normal. And I'm like, are you serious? It's not normal? Like, you're really serious. This is not normal. And she's like, no, this is not okay. You have to figure out how you feel. You can't just go along with what everybody else says. And it was kind of like this huge epiphany for me because I'm like, well, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And she's like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I do now? And that was about the point where I financially reached my breaking point, um, because in the United States, a lot of times therapy isn't covered by insurance. And I don't even think I had insurance at that time. So it was like I was paying for it out of my pocket. And I'm like, okay, well, I can't do that anymore. So what now? That was when I started digging into my personality type and saying, okay, what is the next step? What do I do now? Once I figured out my personality type, then it's like this massive amount of information that is all of the ahas and the, oh, this is why, like, now it makes sense. It's this massive time of understanding. And I'm sure that that's why you're here too. Somehow through your journey of figuring out your personality type, somehow you found me and this podcast. And I'm so thankful that you're here. And I'm so thankful that I get to be even just a small part of your journey. I really, really want to help you. Even if it's just the only thing that I can do for you, even if it's just me holding space for you or me saying me too. This is the time for you to learn and to grow and to understand more about yourself. And this is the time where you really get to decide who you want to be. Part of that process is an unlearning process. Part of that process is recognizing the habits. It's recognizing when you're on autopilot. It's recognizing why you have the thoughts that you have on autopilot. And that can be painful at times. There's a lot of times where you struggle with guilt. And there's a lot of times where it's difficult to say, ooh, my parents made some mistakes. And I know and understand, like, I'm not here to blame anybody. I know that they did the best that they could with what they had. And I appreciate everything that they have done for me. But I think it's also important to recognize that there are some issues and you can't work out those issues if you don't recognize them, right? It's not just my parents, though. There have been other people in my life too that haven't been good for me. There have been some people that are just not supportive, and some people that feed into some of those negative beliefs that I already had. And again, it's recognizing those things and stepping back from those friendships. Sometimes it's confronting those people. Sometimes it's saying, no, the best thing is just space. The best thing is just me walking away. If those people don't support you, if they're not good for you, if they're going in a totally different direction than you are, it doesn't matter if they're family, it doesn't matter if you've known them for a long time. If the only reason that you're still friends with them is because you've known them for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years and you're completely different and they're not supportive of you and you feel bad when you're around them, what's the point of keeping that relationship going? It's not giving you anything positive. It's it's pointless. And it's difficult to say that because there have been people in my life that I've had to step back from, and it's like it feels comfortable, especially the longer that you've known somebody, it feels comfortable. And especially if you have a limited amount of friends and you're like, okay, I have 3 friends and all 3 of them are unsupportive and 2 of them are going in a different direction than I am. And the other one, I just feel bad when I'm around them. It's rough to say, none of these people are good for me. Like, what am I doing around them? And to know that, okay, there's only 3 of them. And so what am I going to do now? But what I've learned is that you have to make way for the good people. If you only have room for 3 friends in your life, that's totally fine. That's an introvert thing. A lot of us can't handle more than just 2 or 3 people, especially if they need a lot of attention. We're not great at the whole attention thing. But if you can only handle 3 people, 3 friends, and you have 3 friends that aren't good for you, then you need to make way for the good ones, right? You don't even have space for them right now. So of course you have to clear some space for them. But once you do clear the space for them, then you open up the door for better people to come into your life. And it's kind of the same way with your family as well. I mean, a lot of people talk about how blood is thicker than water and you should always stick by your family because they're your family. But if your family isn't good for you, then why are you spending so much time trying to please them? Why is blood thicker than water? Because your family, just because you're related to them doesn't mean that they're good people. Just because you have the same blood as they do doesn't mean that they're supportive of you. And if you're going to step back from people who aren't related to you, who aren't good for you, then why wouldn't you step back from people who are related to you if they're not good for you? We talk a lot about boundaries, and a lot of people say, well, you need to confront people and you need to be upfront with them and you need to tell them what the problem is, and all of that is good. I'm not saying that it's not. It is good. But you have to be at a certain point in your journey before you can do that. Not everybody can do that. Sometimes, especially if you've never had boundaries or you're not good at boundaries, the best boundary that you can set is space. Having space in between you, it makes such a huge difference. Once you have your own space and maybe you're in a different state, maybe you're in a different town, you just have breathing room where you don't have to be around those people who are negative all the time. It took me having space from my family to figure out who I was as a person. It took me having that space to figure out what I like to eat and what I like to watch on TV and what kind of clothes that I like. Space makes a huge difference. And if that's the only boundary that you can set, there's nothing wrong with that. That's definitely what you should do. When you're on this journey of figuring out who you are, figuring out how you need to make a change, whatever change it is that you're seeking to make in your life, belief plays such a huge role in the process. There are all these negative thoughts that we talked about that are on autopilot. A lot of them are negative. But you have to sign off on those negative beliefs, right? You have to accept them. And a lot of times when they come to us on autopilot, we don't even think about them. We just sign off on them because that's always how it's been. I've always believed that I needed to lose weight. Even at the lowest weight that I was at, even when I was 140 pounds, I still believed that I needed to lose weight. I've always believed that I don't have enough money. Even though now I make more money than I have ever made in my life, I make more money than my parents do, and I still believe I don't have enough money. But the thing is that you get a say in these beliefs, right? You have the choice of signing off on them or rejecting them. If you agree with it, then it affects you. If you sign off on it and you say, okay, yes, this is going to be a part of my life, I agree with it. I'm always going to be on this hamster wheel of I need to lose weight. I'm always going to be on this hamster wheel of I'm too quiet. I need to be more talkative. I'm always going to be on this belief pattern that I need to be this happy, bubbly, go lucky person that everybody says that I should be. But you can reject that belief as well, right? I shouldn't have to set myself on fire to keep the temperature in the room comfortable for everybody else, right? I shouldn't have to be a whole different person around my friends just for them to be comfortable. I shouldn't have to be happy and bubbly and outgoing and friendly if that's not who I really am. I should be able to be who I really am. But it's all about those beliefs. If you believe that these things are the way that they're supposed to be because other people have told you, because pop culture because people in the world say, hey, in order to be a good person, then you need to be friendly and outgoing and bubbly and likable. We talk a lot about how the world view of weight affects us, right? There's this whole change in Victoria's Secrets because they're like, you know what? Being perfectly thin doesn't make you a good person. It's like there's this whole body positivity movement of like, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter if you're tall or short or fat or skinny. Like, let's be positive about everybody. And that's great to see that. But there's a whole nother side of it that not so many people talk about. There's this perception that you have to act a certain way, that your personality has to be a certain way. Otherwise, you're not really socially acceptable. If you're not the happy, bubbly person, then you're not acceptable. If you're not the person at work who's super friendly and talks to everybody and goes out for drinks after work and goes to the company parties, I call them mandatory fun days because I hate them. And you're forced to go to them. It's mandatory fun because like every company that I work for, I try to get out of them and they're like, no, you have to go. And this one company, I asked my boss, I'm like, you don't understand how much torture this is for me. And he's like, Sarah, if you don't go, you're going to be fired. And I was like, okay, so it's mandatory. And he's like, but it's fun. And I'm like, okay, so it's mandatory fun. Like you have to have fun because I said that it was fun. And so, you know, I said you're going to have fun. So therefore it has to be fun. And I'm like, mandatory fun. Like, could there be anything worse? I mean, really, at work, is it not bad enough that you have to go to work and sit there for 8 hours in a cubicle doing work that you hate just to pay your rent? Like, on top of that, now I have to be forced to go to a park when it's 90 degrees outside and play these stupid games with people that I don't like, that I don't know. Like, really? I didn't think work could get any worse. And then that was like 3 companies ago. I worked for that company. And they're all looking at me like I have 2 heads. Like, I don't get it. It's fun. And I'm like, no, it's not fun. And they're like, I don't get it. It was just as much torture explaining it to them as it was participating in their ridiculous games. And you know, so many times you get in that situation and it's like, okay, fine, whatever. Like, it's just so much easier to go along with what they're saying. It's so much easier to just agree with people. I went to this concert a few weeks ago and it was so much fun going to the concert. But there was another side of it that wasn't quite so much fun. The people that I was hanging out with had other friends and they wanted to go talk to their other friends and then they wanted to invite their friends to do things, and before you know it, every single thing that you're doing is a group activity and everybody is like happy and peppy and chatty and they have all this small talk and they want to know where you're from and what you do for a living. And it's like, if I have to tell this story of myself like one more time, like seriously, you guys are sucking all the fun out of this process. It's like, I really just want to write it down once. Maybe I can make a video and send you the video. Maybe I could just write it down and I could just pass out copies to everybody that I have to meet. But you know, then that would be weird, right? And you don't want to be weird. You don't want to be the weird person because you already know that you don't belong and you're not comfortable. So as much as you want to be like, you know, hand out copies of your life story, like the highlight reel, it's like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's weird. So I'll just sit here and talk to people that I don't like and tell them the same story. You know, it's exhausting. but the world tells us that this is who we have to be. And so many times it's just easier to be like, okay, fine, whatever. It's easier to do that than to say, listen, I'm an introvert. I don't really like small talk. Can we talk about something else? I've done that before, and people look at you like you have two heads. Like, what else is there to talk about? And if you say things like, I don't know, like the meaning of life, you know, why does the wind feel like it does on your skin? You know, the last book that you read, and they tell you about Harry Potter, if they've even read anything recently, most of them haven't. And you're like, I was hoping it was some kind of like self-help book, or some, like, you don't like to learn, you don't watch documentaries, and they're like, oh my god, you watch documentaries? Anyway, it's a difficult process meeting new people, that's for sure. I just wish that there was like this emotional positivity, the same as there is like body positivity. Like people would understand what introverts were, and they would be okay with you being introverted. I think I have a lot more sensitivity around this too, because I grew up as a vegetarian, and growing up in the Midwestern part of the United States, when I was young, most people didn't know what a vegetarian was. There were very few and far between. I mean, in the Midwest, it's like a lot of people were farmers or had ranches that had like cows on them. And so people ate like, meat and potatoes. That was a normal thing. So to be different was like, they didn't know what to do. I would go into restaurants and have to order something special off of the menu because there was no options for vegetarians. It's like, hey, I would like to have fettuccine alfredo, but I don't want chicken on it. And they're like, I don't understand. You don't want chicken? Like, that's part of the dish. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Can you just like not put it on there? And they're like, well, I don't understand. I mean, you're still gonna have to pay full price for it. I'm like, yeah, I don't care how much it costs. I just really don't want the chicken. And it was like every single time that we went out to eat, I had to have this conversation with people, and they would look at me like, there's something wrong with you. I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm different than you are. It's just how it is, okay? Like, can you just not put the chicken on my fettuccine alfredo? Like, seriously. Is it really that difficult? I think that sort of plays a part in my desire to normalize things for people, because it's like I was always that person that was like, sometimes it was fine, and other times it was like, you're making everything so difficult. The people at the table with me would just be like, why do you have to make everything so difficult for everybody? Like, you always have to make a scene. And it was never really like a scene, because I'm not like a make a scene type of person. I'm like the quiet person who's like, I don't want anything to be difficult. But sometimes it turned out to be that way, and it just felt like I just really want to eat. And why does that have to be so difficult? Like, why can't you just understand that not everybody eats meat? Wouldn't that be so much better? When I moved to the East Coast, and I was like 25 by that point, which was about 10 years ago. I moved to the East Coast, and there's a whole vegetarian section on the menu of restaurants. And I didn't have to explain to people that I was a vegetarian. I just had to pick one of those things, and they were like, cool. And I'm like, really? Like, you know what a vegetarian is? And they're like, yeah, tons of people are vegetarian here. And then I moved to Boston, and they have vegan restaurants here. And I was like, what? Seriously? Like, there are so many vegetarians here. There are so many vegans here that there are whole restaurants dedicated to them. Like, how awesome is that? think about how much progress that is from people not even knowing what a vegetarian is to like now there are vegan restaurants. And how much progress that we've come, that has come to pass with like a company like Victoria's Secret saying, hey, not everybody has to be super thin. It's totally fine if you're like normal, which is not super thin. I mean, surely there has to be some progress with people saying it's totally fine if you're not like everybody else. It's totally fine if you don't want to participate in mandatory fun days at work. You can just have a day off instead. It's totally fine if you don't like small talk. That's cool. What would you like to talk about? I mean, wouldn't that be so much better? I think part of it for us, at least one of the first steps, is surrounding ourselves with people who want the same things. And part of that is stepping back from the people who don't want the same things, stepping back from the people who make you feel like less of a person, stepping back from the people who you have to pretend to be somebody that you're not in order to make them feel comfortable. And, like I said, that's uncomfortable because you're going to have to make new friends, but there are people out there who get it. There's this line from a New Kids on the Block song that I like a lot. It says, once in a lifetime might just pass you by because you live within the walls you built. You can start to There's this line from a New Kids on the Block song that I like a lot. It says, once in a lifetime might just pass you by because you live within the walls you built. You can start to tear them down. It's time to start tearing them down. It's time to step in the person. It's time to tear them down. It's time to step into the person who you really want to be. It's time to break the habit of being who you are and to be more conscious, more aware, more intentional about who you are. I really hope that you'll join me in this work. It's an amazing and wonderful and enlightening work. It's such a blessing to be a part of it, and I want to help you. That's the whole reason that I started my blog and my podcast, because I want to help you be the person that you want to be. I want to help you make these changes so that you're happy, so that you're living the best version of your life. And I hope that you'll join me in this free workshop that I'm doing. It's on Thursday, September 2nd. It's called I'm an INFJ, What Now? We're going to talk about how you can make these changes and how you can really step into this person that you're supposed to be, how you can really come home to yourself. Again, it's a free workshop. You can sign up at infjwoman.com/workshop. And there's a link for it in the show notes. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode. I put together a free workbook for you that you can download at thequietonespodcast.com/77. There's a link for it as well in the show notes. And it'll give you some of the notes that we have for this episode, and then have a few questions that you can answer that will help you to put the things that we talked about in this episode to work in your life. And I hope it'll be something that will be really helpful for you. And again, you can download the free workbook for this episode that's at thequietonespodcast.com/77. All right, that's all that we have for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you again next week.
So you just watched that video, and I'm sure you enjoyed it. If you want some more amazing information about INFJs, check out these videos right now. I'll see you there.